Before Wi-Fi, before smartphones, before you could answer any question the moment it popped into your head. There was a different kind of America. An America where Friday night meant something, where Saturday morning was sacred, where the whole family gathered around a single television set, and if you missed a show, it was gone. No rewind button on real life. Today we're going back, not with photographs, not with timelines. We're going back with sound. Because if you grew up in the United States during the 1980s and 1990s, your memories aren't just images. They're sounds, specific, vivid, unmistakable sounds that your brain stored away and never let go of. This is the sonic story of American childhood, and by the end of this video, you're going to feel 10 years old again. Let's go. Segment 2, Saturday morning belonged to us. If you were a kid in America before about 1995, you know exactly what it felt like to wake up before your parents on a Saturday. You didn't need an alarm. Your body just knew. You patted down those stairs and your socks turned on that television as low as it would go, because mom was still asleep and you were not about to ruin this, and you planted yourself on that carpet and didn't move for 4 hours. Saturday morning cartoons were not a casual thing. They were an institution. From roughly 1966 all the way through the mid-1990s, the major American broadcast networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, dedicated their entire Saturday morning lineup to animation, specifically made for children, specifically designed to keep you glued. There was no Netflix, no streaming, no YouTube. If you missed the new Bugs Bunny episode, you had to wait 7 days and hope you remembered. That scarcity made it precious in a way modern children simply cannot understand. For millions of American kids, the Looney Tunes theme was the unofficial start of the weekend. Warner Brothers cartoons had been airing on Saturday mornings since the late 1960s. By the time most of us were watching, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and the Roadrunner were already legends. But we didn't know that. To us, they were just ours. And then there was the cereal. Let's not skip past that. Cap'n Crunch, Cocoa Puffs, Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms. Sugar cereals that your dentist hated and your mother tolerated exactly 1 day a week. That combination, the cartoon, the cereal bowl going soggy by 8 a.m., the carpet underneath you, the specific smell of a Saturday morning living room. That is a full sensory memory that millions of Americans carry around without even realizing it. Segment 3, the librarian's secret weapon. There is a very specific sound that American kids of the 1980s and early 1990s associate with school. It wasn't a bell. It wasn't a teacher's voice. It was wheels. The unmistakable sound of a metal AV cart being rolled down a linoleum hallway. When that cart came through the classroom door, something shifted in the room. Everyone sat up a little straighter, because the cart meant a television. And the television, more often than not, meant Reading Rainbow. Butterfly in the Sky, I Can Go Twice as High. Take a look. It's in a book. Rainbow debuted on PBS on June 6, 1983, and it ran for an extraordinary 23 years. All the way through 2006. That's how many generations of American kids grew up hearing LeVar Burton tell them that a book could take them anywhere. LeVar Burton, who many adults first knew as Kunta Kinte from the landmark TV miniseries Roots, became, for an entire generation of children, simply the man who loved books. The genius of that show was that it never talked down to kids. It treated them like readers, like people capable of curiosity and imagination. Each episode featured Burton visiting a real place, a firehouse, an aquarium, a farm, and reading aloud from a real children's book. Then kid reviewers would recommend other books at the end. Just children talking to other children about what they'd read. When the Library of Congress surveyed American adults about which children's shows they remembered most fondly, Reading Rainbow consistently ranked at the top. Not because it was flashy, because it made kids feel like reading was an adventure. And that theme song, that ridiculous, wonderful, earnest theme song, still stops people cold when they hear it, 40 years later. Segment 4, the day the internet moved in. If you were between the ages of roughly 8 and 18 somewhere in America in the mid-1990s, you know that sound. The dial-up screech. You don't just remember it, it's in your bones. That was the sound of the internet connecting. That was the sound of the future arriving at your house, one screeching handshake at a time. To understand what this moment meant, you have to understand what came before it. In 1990, most American homes had exactly zero connection to a global information network. If you wanted to know something, you looked it up in an encyclopedia. If your family owned one, you called the library. You asked a teacher and waited. By 1995, all of that was changing. And the company that brought the internet into more American living rooms than Anyone else was America Online. AOL. You've got mail. That voice belonged to a man named Elwood Edwards. In 1989, he recorded those 3 little words in his living room in Virginia.
You've got mail.
Segment 5. The Console Wars. There are 3 sounds from the 1990s video game wars that are essentially hardwired into the brains of American children who grew up during that era. The first one is the PlayStation startup, that deep, resonant chord. Sony entered the American video game market in September of 1995. Before that, gaming consoles were largely considered toys, products for young children. Sony changed that deliberately. The PlayStation was marketed to teenagers and young adults. The games were edgier, the graphics were 3D, and the startup sound was designed to feel cinematic. Significant. It worked. The PlayStation sold over 100 million units worldwide. Before Sony, there was a different war, and one side had a scream. Sega's iconic, shouted logo, which became ubiquitous in their late 1980s and early 1990s. Segment 6. Friday night was a ritual before streaming, before downloading, before any of that. Friday night in America had a ritual. You drove, or more accurately, your parents drove, to Blockbuster Video. You walked those blue and yellow aisles for 20 minutes while your family argued about what to watch. You finally agreed on something. You stood in line, you drove home, and then came the moment, the THX deep note, that massive, building wall of sound that meant the movie was actually starting. The THX certification sound was developed in 1983 by a sound engineer named James Moore at Lucasfilm's Skywalker Ranch in Marin County, California. It starts as a single low tone and expands over about 20 seconds into a massive chord built from dozens of layered audio frequencies. The official name is Deep Note. Moore programmed it on one of the first commercial digital audio workstations, a system that cost over $250,000. The result was a sound so physically powerful, so room-filling, that it essentially told your nervous system, something important is about to happen. At home, on a VHS tape, through a television speaker, it still hit, because your brain had been trained. That sound meant the movie was starting. It meant the next 2 hours belonged to you and your family on that couch. And when it was over, when the credits rolled and the screen went to blue, there was the rewind. Be kind, rewind. That was the bumper sticker. Convenience replaced the drive. The algorithm replaced the argument in the aisle. Something was lost in that trade. Something most of us can feel but can't quite name. Segment 8. The encyclopedia that fit on a disk before Google, before Wikipedia. Before you could type any question into a small glass rectangle in your pocket and receive 10,000 answers in under a second. Before all of that, there was Encarta. Microsoft Encarta was a multimedia encyclopedia released on CD-ROM starting in 1993. It was, by the standards of the early 1990s, genuinely mind-blowing. An entire encyclopedia, text, images, short video clips, audio recordings of world leaders and musicians on a single compact disc. For context, before Encarta, a decent set of printed encyclopedias cost somewhere between $400 and $2,200. They took up an entire shelf. They went out of date the moment they were printed, and they had no audio, no video, no way to click from one article to another. Encarta cost $99. It fit in your hand, and it had Mind Maze. Mind Maze was the trivia game built into Encarta, a medieval castle you navigated by answering questions about history, science, geography, and culture. It was a wild